Life Sciences Corp is a Latin American-based pharmaceutical company that develops and commercializes medical cannabis products. Khiron has core operations in Colombia and is fully licensed in the country for the cultivation, production, domestic distribution, and international export of both THC and CBD medical cannabis. In May 2018, Khiron listed on the TSX Venture, becoming one of the first Colombian-based medical cannabis companies to trade on any exchange globally. Khiron Life Sciences Corp is listed on the TSX Venture under the ticker symbol KHRN.
I'm joined now by Juan Diego Alvarez. He's Khiron Life Sciences Regulatory Vice President. Juan Diego, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here and be able to speak about regulatory issues with you.
Sure. Okay, Juan, let's start with a discussion about the rules in Colombia are, it's hard for us in Canada and the United States and Europe to understand exactly what is the status of the regulations in Colombia right now as it pertains to both medical as well as recreational cannabis.
Well, the regulation in Colombia is concentrated only on the medical side. So what we have, what has happened is a development in the last 3 years, basically, in which the government enacted a law, then a decree and some resolutions in which the whole chain of production of medical cannabis until the final product was completely regulated in the country. However, I will also mention that what the government did was also to create what is called non-psychoactive cannabis, and it's everything that is in certain way pure CBD, and in that sense that is not a subject of control, and therefore we can manufacture and have different type of products that are not that have no psychoactive effect. That's why, for example, Khiron has a wellness line of products that is called Kuida, cosmeceutical products that we are commercializing in the country for the last 6 to 7 months.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so CBD then is legal for sale at the retail level right now in stores in Colombia?
It's legal in cosmetic products. We're still waiting for the final regulation for nutritional supplements and food and beverages. Those category of products require additional regulation from INVIMA, which is our sanitary agency. But for cosmetics, CBD it's an ingredient already permitted in the country.
Okay, so the Kuida products are currently for sale in Colombia everywhere with CBD as the active ingredient or one of the active ingredients?
Exactly. It's one of the active ingredients. We have developed a technology called CBD for these products, and we are commercializing the products in different chains of distribution and different retail stores.
Sure. Okay, now tell me about the ability to export Kuida products to the rest of Latin America. What is the condition of the rules in each of the countries that you would export Kuida products to?
Well, that's a complex question, I will say, because as you know, exporting depends from the market in which you are manufacturing and producing the product and the market in which you intend to import the product. So what we have been developing for the last months is we have a regulatory team in each of the countries in the region. We have our regulatory person in Mexico, in Peru, in Uruguay, in Brazil, and Chile. And we are working with them in the specific permits that we will require to be able to commercialize those products. It depends in each country. I will say, for example, that in Peru, for example, we have a supranational regulation because we have a free trade zone between Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia, and therefore we need to homologate the registries or the permits that we have in Colombia. That is a quite simple process, I would say, not as complex as in other regulations. In Chile, for example, we will need to adjust some of the formulations and the ingredients because in Chile you require previous review of the products before commercialization. So we are in that process, and that's kind of the case. It's a case-by-case basis, but we hope that for next year we will have the Kuida products in the region.
Sure. How about Mexico, which is a pretty substantial market? What's the situation there?
Mexico, it's an interesting market because they passed a law around a year and a half ago in which they created or authorized the medical use of cannabis and gave COFEPRIS, which is the sanitary agency, the capacity to recategorize or define what was not psychoactive and therefore was not a controlled substance. And in that sense, they created the medical market and what we can call also the CBD market. COFEPRIS enacted some guidelines in November of last year, but the new government revoked these guidelines in February. So right now what we have in Mexico is a new government that is defining a new regulatory framework, new guidelines and new resolutions that will define the commercialization of these products. But what is also clear is that we have a legal framework that already created the possibility of developing medical products and at the same time CBD products with no restriction of use.
Mm-hmm. All right, that sounds good. Now, Europe is also opening up as a market for Khiron, and I'm curious as to what is the situation with regulations in terms of exporting, say, Kuida products to, say, Germany and the rest of Europe.
Well, the situation in Europe is interesting because they have two different markets for cannabis and hemp. That's kind of the first topic that I will remark. Hemp is defined, or better to explain, the European Parliament defined what is called like a catalog of strains or varieties that can be defined as hemp. So you can only cultivate as hemp the strains that are in this catalog. And those strains in that catalog are strains with less than 0.2% of THC. If those strains have less than 0.2 of THC, are categorized or defined as hemp, and you can develop different type of products. So I'm gonna give you some examples. In UK, you don't need a market authorizations to commercialize products as long as you can demonstrate that they come from these hemp strains. In Italy, you can commercialize these products as long as you demonstrate that they come from the catalog and you notify the government about the use of those strains in these specific products. So you have like a general framework that defines what is hemp and what can be used and what are the products that you can develop with those strains. But also in each country you will need to fulfill certain requirements to be able to enter into the market with the cosmetics products that, for example, we are developing with Kuida.
Interesting. So it's all moving forward. Do you see any countries that are sort of lagging behind in terms of keeping up with the sort of rollout of regulations around the world that you kind of feel could be doing better?
Well, I would say that Latin America is moving fast, but we have cases, for example, like Brazil or Argentina, in which they are allowing the importation of medical products through a specific category that can be defined as compassionate use. But you could have a more robust legal framework to be able to commercialize those products in those two countries, for example. So I think that the ball is moving. Each country it's advancing at different speed. I will remark, for example, Peru is doing a great job in the definition of the regulatory framework. They passed the final decree defining the conditions to commercialize medical cannabis in February. This is a big market. It's a 32 million people market. We have also Chile, which is a market that doesn't have a complete regulatory framework, but have the different categories that you can use to be able to commercialize medical cannabis. So yeah, each country is advancing in a different at a different speed, but at the same time, it's clear the tendency and the trend. Like each country is every time authorizing more products and more or defining a regulatory path that is easier to navigate.
Mm-hmm. Where do you think that the biggest competitive sort of pressure will come from in terms of fulfilling sales and products in Latin America, Europe, et cetera?
Well, I think that Colombia has established as probably the better country in terms of the regulatory framework. Colombia, I think that the different companies that has been established in the country are taking advantage of a very favorable regulatory framework. It's a very specific regulatory framework. You need to navigate a lot of permits and conditions, but I think that that is what is going to guarantee a great product in terms of quality and control in the medium term. So I would say that the countries that regulate this faster and with more detail are the ones that are going to establish them in the global market.
Okay. Juan Diego, that's a great initial conversation with you. I'll look forward to talking to you more in the future. Thanks very much for joining me today.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I think that it's exciting times for the regulatory environment. Everything is changing very fast, so we are up to date all the time.
Fantastic. I'll look forward to talking to you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.